So this section here is particularly important for early elementary when we have students with autism who've been using their autism funding for at-home programming, and now they're transitioning into the schools. And I like to share this because it benefits both the families whose child is transitioning, and it benefits teachers who are going to be receiving those kids into early elementary school. So this is the parent's experience. At home, if a family has a home program, they have complete control over that. They have their autism funding, they may be supplementing it with their own private funds. They get to choose who their case manager is. That case manager is usually a board-certified behavior analyst. They get to choose if they're hiring a speech pathologist, occupational therapist. They get to choose who works with their child, when they, in terms of behavior interventionists or direct therapists coming in on a regular basis. They have control over where the teaching occurs, when the teaching occurs, what the schedule is. They have control. Then they move into school, and all of that is handed over to the school, and there is a relative or complete lack of control, or at least the loss of perception of control. And that can be stressful for families. So imagine you're a parent and you've been running this home program to support your child's learning before they come into school. And now you're coming into this new system that you may know nothing about. It seems very scary and intimidating. There's lots of people, new roles, and there's going to be an IEP, and you're stressed out about what the IEP is going to look like. That's an unknown. And you're losing all this control. Those are kind of the setting events or the context that the parents may be in, and it's important just to be sensitive to that. At home, if there's a home program, there are also regular team meetings. And a team meeting is like an IEP meeting where the case manager and the parent and the implementers, right? So it might be the behavior analyst who's the case manager, the behavior interventionists who are similar to the EAs in school, and the parent. They might get together weekly in some cases, bi-weekly, or at the very least, in my experience, at least monthly, and go through the child's entire program and troubleshoot it and look at the data and make changes, which is a very effective way of supervising and managing a programming and having accountability. And the parents essentially get an IEP monthly or more frequently. And now they're going to be moving over into a school system where that's certainly not the case. They will not be having the equivalent of an IEP meeting on a monthly or more regular basis. They might have the IEP meeting early on in the school year and then not meet with that team again until the end of the school year, or maybe not meet with that team again until next year. And so again, there's a huge contrast in what the parents are experiencing. It's important to be sensitive to. At home, they have a clear program. They know what the methods are. They know how the staff are being trained in those methods and supervised in those methods, which are the strategies equivalent to the IEP. And there's data to show that it's either working or not working. And there's all that supervision, an overlapping of implementation and the team meetings to ensure you've got sufficient case supervision. And now they move into the school system, and a lot of those variables are going to be lacking. Their program is probably less defined. They're not exactly sure what their child is working on. I know lots of my colleagues in the school system say, yeah, we deal with this all the time. Parents ask, or aren't sure, what is my child doing throughout the day? When are they working on these things? They sometimes get superficial information at the end of the day, like it was a good day, but they don't know what happened over the last 5 or 6 hours. So there's a loss of control and predictability there. They don't necessarily know who's going to be working with their child, or they may know that there's one primary EA, but they might not know that. So they certainly won't know that person as well as they would know the people they employ to work with their child at home. And if that person is absent, they don't necessarily know that that person's absent. They don't know who the substitute is. So these are a lot of stressors you can imagine on a family, especially when you contrast it with what their home experience has been as they're transitioning into kindergarten. So in other words, parents have made and are continuing to make a significant investment in their child's education through time and money and sweat and effort and stress and arranging all of these things. And what they want to see as a result of that investment is that it's not lost, that there's a smooth transition over to the school system. And as a result, parents have very high expectations, right? Parents are not going to be those patient people. Parents are going to be suitably impatient because they know it's been working, and that's been a very accountable program with high standards and lots of teaching opportunities, lots of response opportunities. So you can understand if a parent comes into an IEP and you might go, wow, they've got very high expectations, maybe unreasonably high expectations. They're not necessarily unreasonably high, they're suitably high because that's what they've experienced. And so I share this kind of FYI because I've been in the circumstances and I've seen it recently where a school receiving a child with that background may not appreciate all the nuances there that I've just described. So Now we're in the realm of IEPs. Why bother talking about IEPs? Here's a quote from a local school district administrator who has a master's degree in special education, extensive special education classroom experience, lots of experience with autism, and lots of experience writing IEPs. And this is what this person said. I'm not going to use gender pronouns to give them away. Individual education plans are simply not well written. This is the teacher talking. The goals are too vague to be useful. So all this energy and time is spent meeting and writing them in September and October, or even November and December. Right now as we're recording this, it's December 2020. And I know there are IEPs going on right now. And then they get filed away and people forget about them until we meet again, maybe in June. And then when we meet to review it, there's absolutely no data to tell us if we've achieved anything. So we resort to anecdotes as if that's good enough. It's very frustrating and the cycle continues again and again. And again, this is coming from an insider. This is a special education teacher who does IEPs, has been doing them for years. Right? So this is some of the limitations of the system. And it's why we're having this event really, so we can think about how can we improve on this? Because the idea, the purpose and function of an IEP is totally sound, right? It makes total sense in what it should be doing. They're just not living up to their potential. So the IEP, Individual Education Plan, is the document for your child or your student that should identify which excesses or deficits, again thinking of that wavy line I introduced, that behavioral view of autism, should be addressed through instruction. It's the document that should clearly describe the teaching behaviors that will occur, who will do what and when in order to teach these skills. And it's the document that should provide accountability through measurement, which is another sub-theme that keeps emerging with us. This is from the Ministry of Education website. And IEP in British Columbia, and I appreciate that some of you out there are not in British Columbia, but you can just kind of logically generalize this to your settings. An IEP is a documented plan developed for a student with special needs that summarizes and records the individualization of a student's education program. And you'll remember one of those faulty notions was that we don't have to have individualized instruction, right? But this is saying we need individualized instruction. This is coming right from the Ministry of Education in British Columbia. So, is the IEP a legally binding document? People will ask that. Well, if it's in the IEP, then people have to do it, right? Like, we need to get it in the IEP. The IEP is going to be ironclad. And the short answer, to the best of my knowledge and training in British Columbia, is no. The IEP is not legally binding. That's different from the fact that it must be on record and it must be reviewed annually. So legally it has to be there, but it's not legally binding. And some people want to go to war over this, right? But it's in his IEP, it has to be done. That's true in the United States, where there's different laws around the IEP, where an IEP in the United States is a legally binding document. It is a contract with the school to deliver an outcome, and if they don't, schools can be sued, and they are sued in many cases. It leads to a lot of litigation. But that's not the case in British Columbia or the rest of Canada as far as I know. I'm not aware of a school being sued for around an IEP. Right? There are lawsuits around other things, but I don't hear about a lot of litigation around IEPs. Right? But it is the document, nonetheless, that has to be on record, has to be reviewed regularly, at least once a year, and it is meant to be the roadmap for the student. So despite the fact that it's not legally binding, it's still very important, right? Back when I was an education assistant 20 years ago, I relied on the IEP to tell me what I was supposed to be focusing on. And that continues to today. That should serve that purpose.